And did the experience begin to dissipate of this ashram and this love, or did it kind of stay with you as a seed, or how?
Well, I returned to live in the Chateau Marmont. I felt very confident that my son was staying with wonderful parents, mine, and my sister and brother, who were small at the time, so he had siblings, and he was having a wonderful time. In fact, there was a curious event back at the ashram where I had said that I had wanted to study Advaita Vedanta, which is a very refined part of Hinduism that really focuses on the oneness rather than the plethora of gods, more like we are at one with God, which was the appealing thing to me. And I was assigned a Swami to go to his cell at 2:30 in the morning. He would light one of those little oil lamps, and because he spoke English, and his name was Swami Tejomayananda, and he was a dear man to me, and he understood my longing. He told me minimally about his story of his life. He had a wife who was also a Swami in a southern ashram, devoted to Shivananda, who was not in his body, and taught me this every day. And I remember saying one day how much I wished I could stay. And he said, you have, you know, a dharma and a karma and a son. And I said, but of course. And I mention this because when I returned back, I lived at the Chateau Marmont. Talk about a strange world. Watergate was in full glory. And here I am in the Chateau Marmont, which was filled with rock musicians who were all stoned. And I'm walking around in my white caftan, juicing, meditating, ruminating about how I was going to re-enter a world that I didn't know what world belonged to me anymore, or what world I belonged in. I was confused by that. I didn't feel any drive to my career. I felt a greater drive to this discovery that I was on. And I did a number of things at the time. I got into meditation and physical yoga and watched Watergate. And one day I was in a health food store and I saw a picture of a guru named Muktananda. And it said that he would be coming. And I often went down to meditate in a man whose last name I don't remember name. His name was Bob, and he held many meditations in his apartment on Ocean Avenue. And it said that Muktananda would be doing a meditation there, and I often went. The night before, I went to the Self-Realization Fellowship, where you could stay up all night chanting, which I did, in eagerness and prayer that perhaps this just might be my guru. I was looking for a teacher. One of the things that I came to understand in India, which is definitely not particularly incorporated in Western thinking, was a spiritual teacher. It is part of the tapestry of Indian culture that if you are seeking to awaken spiritually, to become enlightened, or however they speak of that, to find one who is indeed enlightened, and through his transmission of his consciousness, the Shakti is what they call it, the connectedness of actually an energy that they have as a power to put into you and awaken you through your chakras to where they can give you, without touching you, sometimes just by looking at you, an experience of enlightenment. And I had heard the name Muktananda, but I heard he beat his disciples. This is when I was in India. So I didn't feel drawn to going down to Bombay and going to his ashram. Felt a little rough. But here was his picture, and it was about a month after I'd returned from India. I meditated all night, praying that perhaps this was my guru. And again, there's all these mixed realities. You're in Southern California, you're in Santa Monica, it's a picture of a guru, it's Watergate, it's going to, you know, this man's apartment to, you know.
And you're a Hollywood movie star.
And you're a Hollywood movie star. And I arrived 2 hours early, sat in the hallway, about 6 in the morning. It was going to open at 8. The door opened at 8. I'm sitting all by myself. Nobody else was there. And who opens the door in Santa Monica 2 months after I've returned from India but Swami Tejomayananda? He looked at me, I looked at him, and he started just, you know, like wildly talking in Hindi. And he grabs me, and he thought I could understand him, even though he'd forgotten his English for the moment. And he wrenches me in, and Muktananda has just sat in his chair, and no one else is there yet, and he throws me at Baba's feet, chattering away, clearly telling about this connection.
Baba
Muktananda.
Yes.
He speaks no English, and the translator is there, which was also, Tejamananda was supposed to be the translator, but he totally lost it. He was only speaking Hindi.
And just for the listeners, Tejamananda, if I can say it properly, was the gentleman that you met in the ashram in India.
In India 2 months earlier, who at 2:30 in the morning was teaching me Vedanta. Right. Yeah. And turned out that shortly after I left, he decided that he wanted a guru in a physical body, which is always desirable, because then you're really dealing with the impact of their consciousness. And he had met Muktananda, and that was it for him. And it was a very big risk for him, because they have their structures. And he left and followed Muktananda to Santa Monica. And there I am, outside the door. I looked up, and I looked at Baba, and he looked at me, and he didn't touch me. And he spoke very abruptly often, and he said to Tejamayan, tell her she's to come to the retreat starting tomorrow morning. And people started to come in, and I was going yes, not knowing what I was saying yes to. And people started coming in, and one of the things I'd had difficulty with in India was bowing before idols, I didn't, I really tried to do it in respect to them, and I did do it, but it was, I said, well, if I only never go all the way down, it's okay. I'm not doing, and so, but I felt like this love of Baba, like it was a wave, and I did spend 2 weeks with him in retreat thereafter.
So you had no problem bowing to him or touching his feet or whatever those were. It
just felt like love.
Yeah.
It was love, and love led the way.
And 2 weeks on retreat, was that life-changing or another life-changing moment?
It was significantly life-changing. They do something called darshan, where you're in a line coming before the guru, and I came before him first day on the retreat and bowed down hesitantly before him and sat up, and he gave me what we now know to be the twaji, which is the look of God, as Baba would do it. And I fell over like a log, and they dragged me to the side, and I was gone for about 4 hours, traveling the inner realms of light, or as far as I could go at that time. It was doing me, and I woke up, it was dark, and I don't think it was awakening, I was sitting up, I was just in bliss. And that started the next chapter, which was another 2 years with Baba, until I met John Roger.
Now, when Baba looked at you and you fell over like a log, was it like fainting, or was it passing out, or was it a different kind of experience?
I guess the closest thing it wouldn't be like passing out, because you're conscious, but you're traveling inwardly, and you're overwhelmed with a blissfulness. It's like a warm totality of wholeness, and at the same, that's a sensation in the body, but I was so ready for this anyway, because I was so ready to close my eyes and wanting to go. And he just gave me, I would say, just a massive kick. And again, it was my experience of what I'd been exposed to, but it was my first experience with a living, powerful, what they call a Siddha guru. Siddhas are powers, spiritual powers. And he was abundant with them. And I remember saying to him once, because I so desperately did not want to be Leigh Taylor Young. I mean, I was doing everything I could to shed this place I was in my life.
Who did you want to be? Some Indian name? Or?
Yes, well, at that point, that's where that was. So if you're looking through the eyes of that time and what was so available, so richly available, it was to immerse yourself in that path. And part of it was, in my eyes, to have another name. So I asked him for a name, and he laughed and hit me with his peacock feathers, which was one of his spiritual techniques. And you would often fall over from that, too. Or as you'd be meditating, he would come up and breathe in your nose, which sounds odd, but then you'd find yourself doing kriyas which are when the spiritual energy moves through the body and goes through the nadis, which are the spiritual nervous system of the body, it will begin to, through the power of the energy, the spiritual energy moving through the body, begin to unblock blockages. And it can make your body naturally do amazing things. It can be sounds, it can be movements you've never done. It kind of, the Shakti or the energy takes you over, which is very kind of understood in these paths. When you get hit with something like that, it's just when you yourself are finding yourself doing these organic things with no mind, just where it's the spirit is doing it to you. It is quite an experience, and you're sweating in a form of bliss as well. It's a very blissful experience.
Now, when Baba did that transmission to you that knocked you out for 4 hours, was it seem like 4 hours? Did it seem like days, or?
Timeless. No sense of time. The only way I knew time had passed is when I woke, opened my eyes. It was dark and nobody was there. I sort of brought myself back to the group, which was in another hall. And the best that I could say of it was just traversing levels of light.
What was the name that Baba gave you at that time?
Mirabai.
Mirabai. And that's a famous Indian poet, is it not?
Yes, she was a poet. She was a queen who was to be a pawn in the bringing together different parts of India. And basically, she fell in love with God, Krishna. And the interesting thing in terms of her legacy is that her teacher's teacher had been in the lineage of Kabir, who is part of our lineage with the travelers. And all she wanted to do was sing God's name and write poetry and sing poetry. And as you read her poetry, it's interesting, and this had nothing to do with, well, unless of course it did. But I, of course, read a great deal about her, but that as you see the progression of her poetry, you see her first as the yearning one. And then as the poetry progresses, it replicates her states of consciousness as she evolves, and it becomes the one. And singing of just the one.
So very much you could identify with that yearning one,
yes,
certainly.
Yes.
Did you keep the name? Do you use it at all? Or?
I don't use it. At that time I was wearing saris and the red bindi and called Mirabai, loving it. Of course, here's my poor son,
Who's Patrick?
Patrick, who I guess I could consider that he had a very colorful childhood. His mother, has another name and I introduced him to Baba, but he found it very natural. I didn't make it like it was unnatural.
Mm-hmm. So this visit to India definitely then was I'm glad we started there. I just had a sense that would be a good place to start, because it really was a crossroads for you in a way, because it's leading you to this path, and of course we'll get there where you finally meet John Roger.
Yes.
But before then, of course, you were married to Ryan O'Neill. Is that correct?
Yes.
And was the trip to India, was that a divorce process or separation as well, or around that time?
I was already separated. That had been for me a form of a crucifixion. I was very idealistic, and I've always been quite idealistic. Actually, at times it's been a management situation because it isn't ideal here.
In this world.
In this world.
Yeah.
But yes, all the loving that I have as my nature, it was a great experience because I put it all on him. So when these things dissolve in the physical material world, for whatever the reasons, these were very difficult reasons that I found hard to comprehend. I didn't have skills in those reasons. It was as if it was a total shattering, but it was a shattering that, as I look back, was the crux on which I began my journey.
Exactly. I think
it was very powerful.
That was the point again of that yearning and that searching at that time.